Good morning. Welcome to OurTown at Comma Coffee. I'm Kurt Caraway. This morning we'll be talking with City Supervisor Shelly Aldean about wind energy and how it affects city planning. Right now we're going to take a short break for a word from our sponsor.
The Carson Mall has fantastic food. All this and more at the Carson Mall.
And we're back. Shelly, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
All right.
Good.
Now, there was just a hearing in the legislature about the wind energy, state law, and I know that, projects that's gone through the city supervisors and the planning department, it's kind of contentious in some ways. You've got people like, yes, we got to have renewable energy. This is great, and other people like, I don't want to live next to this, this thing that's making noise all the time. But
well, Kirk, I think it's all about balance, and I think that's I commend Pete Livermore, Assemblyman Livermore, for bringing this forward. Obviously, he was reacting to input he had received from some of his constituents, and there is reason for concern. I mean, we had kind of a vigorous and robust debate when we adopted our ordinance. We have to comply with state law. Local governments are given a little bit of latitude, but probably not enough. The problem with the bill, as I see it, was that the language additions were a little too general with respect to appearance and location. For example, if I had my druthers, I would like location to mean parcel size. Give local governments the right to regulate the parcel size on which these alternative energy devices can be placed, because maybe it's not appropriate to put it on a 6,000 square foot lot. On a 1 acre lot where you can insulate the neighbors from the impacts, maybe that's okay. So anyway, we'll see. I mean, it may be amended in committee, and it may emerge as a refined bill. I think the fundamental question is not, for example, Reno, as I understand it, they have a number of wind turbines and solar panels that have been erected on publicly owned property, not in residential areas necessarily. And to me, that's a more appropriate application, because I am concerned that one person benefits by reducing their electrical bill at the expense of their neighbor. If in fact that wind turbine, for example, is unsightly or generates more noise than anticipated.
Right.
And we're finding with a couple of the installations that comply with our ordinance that we're having some issues with respect to noise, and that what was represented to the buyer of the unit may be kind of inconsistent with what's actually happening in the field in terms of noise generation.
It's kind of like those mileage numbers you buy on a car that's they say it gets 50 miles per gallon.
Yeah, that's exactly
really
right.
35.
More or less, plus or minus. But I mean, this is an important issue to people who are concerned about quality of life, and so we're I'm sure going to wrestle with this issue for a while longer. The other thing that's interesting is that if you go online and take a look at websites having to do with alternative energy, all of the universities, or many of the universities, are doing research on improving the efficiency and the operation of these units, and they are very cognizant of the fact that noise is a primary issue, and so the state of the technology is going to change rapidly, and so even though a wind turbine today may exceed the decibel level that's permitted in our code, 6 months from now they may have a new type of unit that is considerably quieter, and I think we need to make sure that these devices don't become an impingement on neighboring property.
Okay, we're going to take a short break right now and come back after a word from our sponsor.
The Carson Mall has exciting shopping. All this and more at the Carson Mall.
And we're back talking with Shelly Aldean. Now we're talking about how the state is having an effect on this local issue, and I know Nevada is kind of is strange. It's very much, I forgot the term for it, but the state basically rules the roost here in terms of
Dillon's Law.
Dillon's Law, what you guys can do. And then also, I mean, there's the, there's always the talk because of the big state budget hole, that they're going to start pulling money out of local budgets. What have you seen so far in that respect? Have you seen anything that's...
Well, yeah, I mean, there's some troublesome areas with respect to Health and Human Services in particular. I mean, I think we're looking at a $2.2 million hit, at least that was the estimate, know. And so I guess that the conversation we need to have is how many of these services are legally mandated and how many are discretionary. I mean, even though my heart goes out to the people who need assistance, is there a way that we can deal with the core problem, and integrate them back into the mainstream and have them become less dependent upon public subsidies? I mean, ultimately, I think that's the direction in which we need to move. And I'll just segue into an organization that I'm involved with called the Capital City Circles Initiative, which is a self-help initiative which does precisely that. We put folks who are basically living at the poverty level through a 20-week Getting Ahead course, which teaches them how to become members of the American middle class. And these people, are interviewed to ensure that they don't have anything that is going to, impede their ability to succeed in the program. And it's amazing to witness the transformation. I mean, these people are highly motivated, and so it can be done. And I think we need to if I had my druthers, if I were queen for a day, this would be the new welfare system of the future. Enabling people to help themselves. It restores their dignity, it makes them financially independent and self-sufficient, and it is a boon to our local economy as well. And so, again, we'll see. We don't know the full, obviously the City Center project is largely dependent upon, what happens at the legislature in terms of unfunded mandates that may be handed down to local government. Yeah,
because that could put a big old hole in the city budget.
It could.
And in terms of Health and Human Services, I mean, some of the programs, like you said, it's sometimes these things go halfway. Like they'll provide support for people, but not the help they need to get to move forward. Or
That's exactly right.
And then some of these also have matching federal dollars too to things the state's doing. So the state wants to cut it off, but then it's not. You don't even lose just the state dollars; you lose federal dollars too. So it's a double whammy to cut some of these things.
That is true, but I think the self-sufficiency model is the one that we need to pursue long term, because it doesn't make sense. It's a bandit approach to the problem. It's like the old biblical saying that you give a man a fish and you'll feed him for a day, you teach him how to fish, and he'll be self-sufficient for the rest of his life. I mean, that's the mantra that we need to adopt in our social service industry.
Yeah. And I know from talking to other people who do this work, for like elderly services, helping people stay in their homes, and be able to, providing them some services so they can be self-sufficient for a while. And there's talk of cutting back some of those programs, which the problem is that it doesn't actually decrease the cost because those people end up going in a nursing home.
Exactly right. They become basically wards of the municipality.
Right.
But that brings up it's a hot topic for me. Because I have, witnessed some of the fraudulent practices. I mean, families a century ago, these older people wouldn't end up in a nursing home. They wouldn't end up on the street. They wouldn't be left to fend for themselves. They would be taken in by members of their family. And as a society, these families need to become more responsible for their elderly, and those elderly need to be considered a valuable resource and not discarded like yesterday's trash. And I don't know how you inculcate that into the culture. It used to be a strong part of the rural culture in this country, and we've kind of lost sight of our commitments to our family members, especially the elderly members of our family.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
And thank you for tuning in to Our Town at Common Coffee. We will catch you next time.
The Carson Mall has excellent services. All this and more at the Carson Mall.